Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good. Now today I've got a very special guest. I know a lot of you know that I do some Arsenal women content and I thought I could bring on a big Arsenal women fan, Freddie Cardy. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing? How are you after that Everton draw? I know we were saying off air it's not really being the best time right now for the Arsenal ladies team.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. Firstly, I wasn't at the game on Sunday. I was at Sheffield United Women Bristol City, which was much more enjoyable. We had 6 goals there, which meant that yesterday I had to catch up on the Arsenal game, watch it back already, sort of knowing it was 0-0 already, hearing and you do get a decent idea sometimes on social media
Yeah.
about how a game has panned out, and we know what Arsenal Twitter can be like. And yeah, it was a worrying performance, wasn't it? And one that's become a little bit too common for our liking as Arsenal fans, and it's now a big week to try and turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly wasn't the best. I watched like most of it, and I think, like you said, I think if it was like a one-off result where we had a bad day, we drew, that would be fine. But like you said, we're becoming a little bit predictable. Like in the league as well, we always sort of finish third or second. We can never really get over that line, which is obviously something we'll discuss. But I wanted to talk about the performances as well because for me, when we played Man City, I was okay with that because you look at Man City, they've strengthened. Obviously, Miedema's there. We all knew it would have been a tough game, so a draw I wasn't upset about. But then you look at the Leicester performance, the Everton one. It's sort of below what we should be performing like. So, what would you put that down to? Like what the why? Because you look at our squad we have as well. We've got some incredible players, and we should really be performing better.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the sort of almost the best performance we've had was in that Hecken game when we were a goal down on aggregate, and we knew it was like a cup final, and we knew that probably Jonas's job was on the line. Certainly, the way he went about his business, I guess, celebrating those goals, he came across as a very relieved man, didn't he? And I think that's probably the best Arsenal have played, and when they've actually known they've got to go out and score goals and score,
Yeah.
get a few as well, because once they got ahead, they made sure to really take control of that game. And maybe that wasn't the most enjoyable watch because we knew what was up for grabs. But as you say, the City game, I think you take that, don't you, on the opening day
Mm.
of the season. I think almost we probably had the better chances. I know City had some as well, and Manu had to make a couple of good saves, but we did, for my liking, I think we missed 3 1-on-1s. Probably Steiner and Russo should have put 1 or 2 away between them. But Leicester was a really, really bad watch, unfortunately, and it was one of those where if we didn't win it, then almost we'd be further down the line probably already in terms of the conversations we are having.
Yeah.
But when you look at teams like Chelsea, putting 7 past Crystal Palace, we know City have been a little slow coming out of the blocks as well. But obviously with their attacking firepower, I think that'll come together quite soon. But I think it's worrying for Arsenal at the moment because as Arsenal fans, I don't think we look forward to playing teams lower down the table. And if you want to be a top team and challenging, you need to be winning those games, putting teams like Everton away.
Yeah.
And that's not been the case. And it was very nearly not the case at Leicester as well, because they had some good chances to get back in the game.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's quite strange to think about it. We're okay about the top four teams, or when we've got Chelsea at the weekend, and I think to myself, it wouldn't surprise me if we went there and won or got a draw. Like those are teams we're usually okay, which is obviously a really positive thing. But like you said, it's those low block teams, and I just worry that we've not improved with these low block teams. Like the season has just started, so I'm going to give it time. But I think that's our biggest sort of concern with those sides that we're not able to sort of beat. And I wanted to ask you about Jonas because, I know a lot of fans at the moment aren't really with him, and for me, I just want to see us improve. I just want us to win something this season. It's not just a Conti Cup because that is great winning that, but we want to win something else as well. But yeah, I just want your overall thoughts on him, how you're feeling about him right now.
I feel if we were to part ways with him tomorrow, I think how would we look back on his tenure? Just coincidentally, if he was to leave now, at the moment we're recording this podcast, would we look back at it as a successful time? How would we sort of rate it out of 10? And I don't think it's really going to be higher than a 6, maybe, if you were to look back on his sort of 3 years so far, as obviously in his
Yeah.
4th season and Arsenal giving him that long-term contract. We know Arsenal's history and we know other teams have caught up. But when you look at the performances week by week and when you see what Arsenal can do, we look at Chelsea this weekend. We played them last year after a bit of a struggle before in terms of a bad start to the season, and we blew them away. We blew them away at the Emirates. We obviously beat them in the Conti Cup final, but then after we beat them at the Emirates, we went and lost to Tottenham, and that was
Yeah,
sort of the week that has summed up Jonas's time. And this season has just really, really struggled to get going. Obviously we had the Champions League qualifiers. We had to get through them. But it almost strikes me now and that the club are like, actually, we've got to play Champions League football. And obviously they've prepared for that. But I feel like almost the fixation on qualifying the first place has now almost made there be a little bit of confusion around actually how far do we want to go in the Champions League? Because if we really commit too many resources to it, is it going to detract from our WSL performances? And you could probably say it has so far. I think the worrying thing for me is that players, are they enjoying playing under Jonas, and are we enjoying watching football under
yeah,
Jonas? And I'm not sure we are. Certainly at the start of this season, it looks like there's a lot of almost coaching going on the pitch between the players, certainly in the game on
yeah,
Sunday. And that's quite worrying because it's not a new squad. We've only made a couple of outfield summer signings. This team should be sort of further ahead than they probably are now. So it's always an interesting topic. We know he divides opinion, but I think he does know the pressure he's under as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like us, managing to get to those group stages. I think if we hadn't have gone that far, I think a lot of fans obviously would have wanted him out. And I think the club at that moment, I think you'd have to go at that point. So obviously at the moment we are in the Champions League. So I think it's so hard with sort of the time. And like you said, with Jonas, like if you look back on, his time, if he, like you said, if he left tomorrow, if he left now, like he hasn't done all bad. He's done a lot of good things, but I think last season, this season so far, I'm just thinking, is this the furthest he can take us? Like, I think the season where we had all of those ACL injuries, you
Mm.
can't really say to him, we should have won the league, because with the squad we had then, it wouldn't have been a realistic expectation. And I think we did pretty well that season, but I think last season was quite disappointing. Like you said, the squad we have, I think it's more than capable of doing a lot better than it is. And, we've got so many amazing players. I mean, someone like Russo as well. I mean, she's come to Arsenal to win things, not just like Conti Cups, but to really have that Champions League experience. Because I know with the United women team, unfortunately, they're just not there yet. And I think, I don't think we could win a Champions League yet, but I think we're a bit further than United. I mean, Chelsea women are they're just there probably now, and we're not there yet, which is a shame because we have such a big history and we've had amazing players there. And I think you make a good point as well about sort of the players, because I don't know if I believe this, but do you maybe think the players, like he's lost the players a bit? Like, I don't know if he's lost the players in the dressing room yet, because like our performances haven't been good, and it's hard to figure out right now because I know the team love Arsenal, and they'll play for the badge and for the fans because they love the fans. But do you think they're still playing for Jonas, or do you feel like it's not really working right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really good question. And I read an interview with Viv Miedemar earlier this week and similar ones with Jen Beattie, and they talked about, how Joe Montemurro was almost a father figure, the Arsenal's previous manager, and, and how much of a role he sort of played in their development, but also off the pitch. And I don't think Jonas is like that. I don't think he's got that similar status in the players' minds. We're not privy to information in the dressing room, of course we're not.
Yeah.
I don't think he's disliked, and we really don't want to speculate as well, because
Mhm.
every player will have different relationships with
Yeah.
their own. The players who I think won't be as big as fans are probably those, like if you look at people like Gio, going back to Mane Iwabuchi, maybe, who almost didn't fit into his style and then were almost slowly phased out and just didn't get that opportunity. And there's almost a danger of that happening at the moment now with Katrina Kuhl. And obviously, we have seen players leave, and there's been sort of no mention of the manager in their sort of farewell posts and statements and stuff like that. And that's never the greatest sign, I don't think. But also, the manager isn't there to be everyone's best friend. So on a personal level, we don't really know. But it does seem at the moment, like you say, that the players, they don't have that sort of link up.
Yeah.
they look like almost a new team the way they've started the season under a new manager, and that's not what they should look like. This is, in my view, the best squad Jonas has had to work with at this time at Arsenal. He said 3 seasons to get us to this stage. As you say, 2022, 23, so many, so many things going wrong, and he and the team have to take credit for how they managed through that. For this season, I just think the excuses have dried up now, and Arsenal fans have become impatient. We need to see those big trophies being delivered.
Yeah, and I think it's so hard really to be patient. I think this season, I think for me already, I feel a bit drained. I think the Everton game, like Victor on here who always watches my stuff, is saying, every season you can
Mm.
predict that we'll come third, that we'll struggle against those teams. And I think this season, I think with Miedema going, I think the whole situation has changed people's opinions. I think for me at last season I was really if he went last season, I'd be sad it didn't work out, but I wouldn't really complain. And obviously, I feel like that right now. But I just want us to improve. And this season, for me, I do think it'd be make or break for Jonas. I think we've got to have a big season. But for you, what would you say your expectations are, or your bare minimum requirements? Because I know this, the FA Cup for me, we could. I think we are good enough to win that.
Mm.
Obviously the league is so tough because obviously Chelsea have got a new manager doing amazing things, and yeah, just tell me sort of your expectations about all the competitions that were in the season.
Yeah, I think it's. I'd be happy for us to put the WSL in front of the Champions League. I know there's been a lot of talk about sort of the load management in terms of looking at these Champions League games, but as I've said previously, teams like Chelsea have played such good football in the Champions League and then got knocked out by Barcelona in the semi-final or thrashed in the final. It's a tough competition to win for a reason, because you're in there with some of Europe's elite, and even though we've seen Arsenal go toe to toe with them, and Bayern Munich will be a really, really interesting indication tomorrow night. I'm really actually looking forward to it, just to see how we hold up against such a good side. But for me, it's got to be the WSL or the Champions League, or perhaps narrowly missing out the WSL, like a final day, like
Yeah,
last season, sort of goal difference. One of those where you can say, you know what, we can't really complain here. We've given it our all, and we've just missed out. I think the FA Cup's really interesting. I was at that final. I think it was in 2021 where we lost to Chelsea at Wembley, and that does feel like a competition that's eluded us. Obviously, the Wembley final, I can imagine just how many Arsenal fans would make the journey across London, and it would be amazing. I think we were a little bit unlucky against City getting knocked out last year, but I think that's a really good point, because the FA Cup means so much to people.
yeah,
And that is a competition. Obviously, we're going to have to look to have a run in. We start later on in the Conti Cup now this season. We start in the knockout stages, and people might argue that gives you a little bit of an advantage compared to some of those smaller teams. But Arsenal did win the Conti Cup going all the way through the group stages last season. So the important thing is that they do know how to win trophies, and they have brought in players as well, like Mariona Caldente, who have won the league year in, year out, and have won the Champions League. And I think players like that are really important, almost can do more in some ways in terms of the mentality than the manager. And I think Mariona will be really interesting. In the Champions League and the qualifiers, she was one of our standout players, and
yeah.
she's got that chant as well. So she's definitely popular.
Yeah, I really like her. I think you can really see throughout pre-season that she's got this energy that we absolutely need in this team, and I think she's going to do really well. And hopefully, she has a really good season. But I think the signings we've made. I mean, Cavadi's another one. I think she should be getting more minutes, absolutely. But I think the squad's so good right now, and I'm just thinking, like you said, this is probably from the time Jonas has came in to sort of now. You look at this and think this is a really good squad, probably the best, like you said, that he's had. And I do think this team needs to be, achieving silverware. And I think, like you said, with the league title, if we're like a point off, it would be sad, but you could say at least we're really going for it again. And I think we have dropped off a little bit, and I think that's quite disappointing. But I think this season it'd be amazing for us to try and maybe get to an FA Cup final, because I
Mm.
know when Jonas came in, we got to that, and we've never really got to that final again. And I understand we've had Man City and we've had tough, teams in that, but I do agree. I think it's not been the best. I just wanted to read out some of these comments. I generally believe Viv didn't see a future under Jonas. I think he was part of the reason she left. What do you think of that? Do you think that might be true?
I think personally for her, I don't know whether Victor's referring to whether the
Mm,
club's future in terms of silverware, but I think it probably came to a natural end just in terms of how it wasn't quite working out. We've seen players like her who are almost they're those special players who are quite outside the box. You can't really fit them into one category, and often they haven't quite thrived under Jonas. He's never quite found a way to get the best out of Viv Miedemar. He's obviously brought in the likes of Russo and Blackstenius, who are obviously more typical number nines, even though Russo will look to drop deep. And he did try her. It was a combination of things. I think, the ACL is so difficult to come back from. And obviously Arsenal had to change a lot in the time while the likes of Miedemar and Mead were away. And almost the fact that we had to bring in some of those fringe players, some of those younger players like Katrina Kuhl, who played loads of minutes in that time, and now these players are back from injuries, it actually pushes them out. So some players have almost come through and developed almost quicker than maybe we would have planned them to initially because of that sort of injury hit season. So the Viv one's interesting. I think we've got to sort of wait and see how she gets on at Manchester City, haven't we? She's not set the world on fire yet, but she's really showed signs actually. Once she's got on the ball in and around the final third, we know that she's going to get back to her best probably. But it's just if Jonas as a manager felt that she wasn't right for his system, she revealed actually that she was looking at moving away as soon as winter of sort of last year, so December, sort of January turn of the year.
yeah.
So obviously it was something that maybe she wasn't quite happy for a while. And obviously they've parted ways, no new contract, but it's going to be hard, isn't it, for Arsenal fans? If Miedemar goes on and scores the goals and Arsenal miss out on silverware, then that conversation is going to come back round again.
Yeah, I think if she, even though this sounds bad, I think if she did okay at Man City, but she didn't win things, it might make us feel a bit better. But
Yeah.
I think we all wish a wow, and for me, I've moved. I think we have to move on from it eventually. But I think if we're not doing well, we're going to talk about it more because she could have helped us in these games, like the Everton one. She could have got us a winner, or she was. It was just so sad how it ended because we didn't really expect it to end. I know a few seasons back I thought she would have gone to maybe Barcelona and she chose to stay at Arsenal, and
Mm.
that's sort of the sad thing that it hasn't worked out. But unfortunately, this does happen sometimes. But I just really hope that obviously we'll have a good season. And I wanted to touch on obviously the Bayern Munich game tomorrow. Like you said, it's an exciting time. It's just exciting to obviously the Champions League. It's just a very good time. I just love the Champions League, and I think for us, we missed that last season. Obviously, getting knocked out quite early on. But how are you feeling about the game? Would you make any changes to the team for the game tomorrow?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. I think we will see changes. I fancy that Manu Zinsberger, I think I'm right in saying formerly Bayern Munich, in terms of the
Yeah.
goalkeeping. I thought Van Domselaar was brilliant on her debut, but she looked a little shaky.
Mm.
Against Everton, her kicking was off it, a couple of sort of mistakes, and we are going to see Jonas rotate the goalkeepers, often not on merit, but I think sometimes someone's experience like Manu coming back in. A Steph Catley or Leah Williamson, if they're fit enough for 90 minutes, then absolutely, because we've got to start looking at the load on the likes of Katie McCabe, especially Emily Fox, with Laura Veenreuter still not back in training as well. McCabe and Fox have played a lot of football, and I think as well Arsenal sometimes do miss McCabe being able to
Mm.
play further forward, play on the left wing, and cause problems. So I think we will see a few changes, whether Stina Blackstenius perhaps comes back in and Alessia Russo drops to the bench, because Frida Arnhem, I thought she was unlucky against Everton. She caused them some problems, and her best form does seem to come alongside Blackstenius. So
Yeah,
maybe they'll have to make that change tomorrow. Of course, Arnhem scored. The last time that we played Bayern Munich at the Emirates, that just incredible goal when
that
I
was
think
a great game. That, yeah.
the back heel. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a top Bayern side, but one that didn't actually get out of the group stage last season, so they're not quite at the level of really a Lyon or Barcelona, but certainly squad wise, they've got a lot there. Pernilla Harder is a familiar one for us, and of course Georgia Stanway, an England midfielder. A lot of sort of that core sort of German team. So be really good. It's a shame it's not at the Allianz Arena. It's at like the smaller sort of campus stadium they have. But I know there's a good sort of 200 Arsenal fans, I think, travelling out there, and a few German Gooners, and I think that does level the playing field a little bit. We obviously lost at the Allianz last time, so it's a shame it's a smaller venue. I think the same with the Juventus game as well, but it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's just amazing, like we said, to be back in the competition. And I think for me, like I think Bayern, I think we're at the stage where I think they're probably the team that we could probably compete with right now. Like
Mm,
Barcelona's always tough. I think on a day when we're at our best, we can obviously, beat most teams. But I think as well, like I think the squad, I know besides injuries, we sort of I feel like Jonas at the moment might not know who's sort of strongest 11. Like for you, what sort of strongest 11 do you think we have right now? I mean, I know, like we said, Catley's come back a bit. Williamson, they've both they're probably not fully fit and they're just getting their minutes in. But what would you say our like strongest lineup is? Because I think last season we saw a lot of different sort of lineups, didn't we? With Jonas trying to
mm.
figure out what team to play.
Yeah, I think we've got almost so many options at the moment that it is hard to say. And when you have got quality players who, on paper, you'd say this is our strongest lineup, but maybe when some of those players are underperforming, then it is hard to decide. I think Leah Williamson alongside Lotta Wubben-Moy is our best partnership. I think Laia Kadina has improved. But she still can start games a little slow. She can still be a little bit shaky at the back, whereas Williamson really offers that calm alongside Wubben-Moy. She offers those sort of long passes in behind as well, which just gives Arsenal a bit of a dimension in attack. I think at the moment, Steph Catley is obviously probably a better defender than Katie McCabe. As we said, allows McCabe to go further forward. Emily Fox, fantastic player, one of the best right backs in the world, in my view. And obviously with Wienreuter out injured, it means so many minutes for Fox. Midfield is really interesting this season. Obviously a massive loss with Victoria Palova going out. I think it's a big boost that Leah Valti's back and fit, and she's done really well, sort of coming back into the side. Kim Little's still going on, starting every game, the captain. So it's really hard to pick that midfield. Cooney Cross obviously does lack some of that experience. I think it'll be her first real time stepping out in Champions League football for Arsenal. Obviously joined on deadline day last summer. So that's an interesting one in terms of midfield. Little and Valti are a little bit more reliable. The two of them will sit back a little deeper. And then
Yeah.
in front of them, you mentioned Kafaji earlier, playing in the number 10. We obviously got really excited about her in pre-season, and maybe we haven't seen as much of her since. And it's really interesting to see how she'll be managed. But she's someone actually with that Champions League experience. She was in that Hecken team who got a draw with Chelsea last season. I think they did the double over Real Madrid as well. So I would like to see more of her. I think a lot of fans would. And then out wide, I think Mariona, this is a competition we're going to need her in, and then one of Ford or Mead on the right. And for me, I do feel for Stina Blackstenius, but we know Russo last season how well she did. But I do feel if you're going to go with Frida Marnham, maybe Marnham and Russo are still developing sort of their link up, but her and Blackstenius I think are very good together, and I might be inclined to go with that tomorrow. But yeah, long answer to your question, but I'm having to put it together in my head because it's a
Yeah,
difficult.
it's tough. I think it's obvious. I think it's a good thing as well that we have these options. Like, there's so many options as well because sometimes if Black Stenius isn't playing, bringing her on, bringing Beth Mead on. Sometimes Beth Mead might not always play, and it's amazing sort of to have these options. And I don't really mind Jonas rotating the team from time to time because I think defensively, we sort of know our back four. Obviously, if Williamson's fit, she'll be playing with Ruben Moy or Gadine. I'm not too fussed, but I think we know that. I think the midfield, obviously, I think with Kim Little, obviously, I don't want her to get injured. So sometimes, like when she's not playing, you do realise how important she is. And obviously, Leovalti's come back as well. She's had a few injuries, and we're definitely seeing more of her. So it's obviously really hard to say, isn't it? Because like a lot of these players probably won't want to be on the bench, but it's hard to sort of have that. So I do think this game is going to be a great option to rotate. But obviously, we mentioned before about the disappointing result against Everton. Now, do you think that will like fire them on, wanting them to put in a better performance? Because we know as fans that performance wasn't good enough, and I'm sure they'll know that themselves. So do you think they'll definitely be up for this game tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. And what they have done well is bounce back early this season. When they lost at Hecken, I asked Kim Little and I said, look, you've got Man City, you've got the second leg, you've got to win. And I almost said it must be quite nice actually when you lose to know you've got these opportunities straight away. And when you do have a busy schedule, you get that because you have to get straight back on the training ground straight on the plane or the bus and straight into action again. And Arsenal will benefit from that, I think, going to turn around
Yeah.
against Bayern Munich. They know the pressure that's on. They'll be trying not to think about the fact they play Chelsea on Saturday. Now, Bayern have Wolfsburg on Saturday as well. So both teams are in quite similar predicaments in terms of massive league games and their own title races. But yeah, Leovaldi and Jonas both spoke about it earlier. They knew that Everton wasn't good enough, and they know they've got to put it right against Bayern.
Yeah, I think I did listen to a bit of what you said, and I think it's good that they know sort of how they should be performing. And I think for this game, it's going to be, I'm just excited to see the changes. Hopefully, I hope we do see a few more changes. No, I know we spoke a bit about before about the goalkeeper situation. Obviously, Sinsberger has been our main number one for a while. Obviously, Sabrina Angelo was here, and now she's at Villa, so we did need to bring someone in. I wanted just to sort of compare them for Domlasar now and Sinsberger. Obviously, it's so hard to sort of judge her right now. She's just come in and we've only seen her for a few games. But I think for me personally, with Sinsberger, I love her energy, her character. And I think, when she's got that confidence, she's an amazing goalkeeper. But
Mm.
I've always felt we could improve a little bit in these areas. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you've made of them both so far and who you think will end up being our number one throughout the season.
Yeah, well, firstly, I did rate Sabrina D'Angelo, and there were times where
Yeah.
she was sort of coming in and getting the nod over Zinsberger, and there was genuine competition between the two. So I think for Arsenal to end the season with both D'Angelo and Marquise moving on was a sign that actually Zinsberger was, the out and out number one and someone who had improved over the season. I don't think many people sort of would disagree with that. Van Dom Salah has obviously come here knowing she's going to play football. She's a top talent. She's one of the best sort of young goalkeepers in Europe. Only Aston Villa for a season. Arsenal did have to pay a fee to get her out of her contract. So obviously someone who's very highly rated, and she's not going to come here to sit on the bench. So we are going to see sort of genuine rotation. They're both going to offer different things. As I said, Van Donsel's kicking a little bit of a worry maybe on Sunday. But goalkeepers, I think in Arsenal's world are quite hard to judge because you look at someone like Courtney Brosnan for Everton and the amount of shots she had to save. Now it's different for someone like Van Domselaar because we end up judging her more on her kicking because she doesn't actually have those saves to make. Whereas someone like Manu Zinsberger tomorrow night is going to play in the game where she is going to be called into action. Unless Arsenal are flawless at the back, she is going to have more saves to make. And that's why Van Domselaar will almost have been glad against Leicester that, you know what, I've got my opportunity. But sometimes
Yeah.
the worst thing for a goalkeeper is when you've got absolutely nothing to do and then you find yourself replaced because you then can't step up and prove yourself unless something comes your way. And she did make those fantastic saves against Leicester. So it's great to have that competition. Chelsea have got it. Probably City have got it as well. Yamashita's come in alongside Keating and she's been starting. So you do need those two top goalies. I mean, look at it on the men's side with Raya and Ramsdale. The
Yeah.
competition is a good thing and Arsenal will benefit from it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a positive thing. I mean, like you said, I really love Sabrina. I think, like, if she would have been on number one this season, I would have been up for that. But obviously, as well, I think we know Sinsberger's good, but I think we always knew that there could be a bit of room for improvement because
Mm.
I know at the start of last season we had a bit of a goalkeeper problem for a few games, and then after a while it all kind of sorted itself out. And I think it's going to be interesting to sort of see how it does go with regards to that. Um, a good point here actually. Big up everyone that is watching this as well. Just watching two matches, I felt Van Dam Lassart is better than Manu in stability. I think like it's obviously hard to tell at the moment because I think when we play maybe a team like a Chelsea or it would be good to see what she is like. But do you think it's too early to judge who you think's better at this moment? Because I know Van Dam Lassar's only played about two games and Zinsberger's had a lot of games for Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, Zinsberger didn't play the Leicester game, but she was really supporting
Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
on
Yeah.
the side, which was really, really cool to see and sort of ran on to the end and celebrated with her. But I think, there were fans always straight away going, is this performance the end of Zinsberger's Arsenal days? And it's like, we need to settle down. We know Jonas is going to look to use both goalkeepers. It's almost becoming more of a trend in modern football, as I said.
Mm. Yeah.
One of them may well come out stronger. And if that's Van Domselaar, then great, because your signing's paid off. If it's Manu, then even better, because it means she's improved and she's taken her game to new levels. But they have got a really good goalkeeping group. Every goalkeeper who's been brought in to play alongside Manu has ended up moving on. Now, that won't be the long-term plan with Daphne Van Domselaar, because we know how promising she is. So actually, I think the minutes probably Manu is going to play less and less. But long term, it's really hard to know. But it's just going to make them even more motivated to get in the team, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you'll always have this competition, like you said, with the men's team, with Raya Ramsdale. We saw that for a very long time. And obviously, it's great to see how supportive they are of each other. Like, Sinsberry could be a bit bitter or she could be a bit upset, but she's really happy. And I think that's an amazing quality to have. And I think it's great to see all those like positive energy around the team. And I completely love that. And yeah, I think whatever happens, I'll always be happy. And I know Sinsberger has got, I think she might have like 1 or 2 years left. So I think maybe her time might be coming up soon, and she's just wanting to see her contract out. But I do love Sinsberger, and I think she's a very good goalkeeper. And the team obviously worked really well under her, and we know sort of how Sinsberger works, so it's obviously early to judge. But I wanted to read this question out as well. As someone who's not as clued up, are tactics style of play different or the same to last year? I think at the moment, like I think when we played Man City, I would have said, we look like a lot stronger. But I think because the last two games, we have some similarities as last season in the sense that those low block teams are a real struggle. Like we're doing good in the possession, but it's a bit like Arsenal now. When our final third is quite poor, isn't it? And I think that's something that if we want to win the league, we do have to improve on. But what would you say to that comment?
Yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't feel like a lot has changed, and whether they've had the really the time to do it. Obviously, they had that postseason friendly in Australia. Then there were a couple of rounds of international games. There were the Olympics. Then they had those two friendlies in America. They played Southampton, and then they're straight back into the WSL. So it's not a load of time. The frustrating thing for me probably is that we haven't seen a load of new signings coming in as compared to some of the other clubs who have sort of gelled a little quicker. You look at teams like Brighton who've brought in loads of players, and people have gone, well, that's a lot to ask in terms of them all gelling and bonding, but they've done really well. They've come flying out of the blocks, and that's the annoying thing with Arsenal is actually not a lot has changed personnel wise. The players who've come in should be adding to the squad. People like Kafaji, we've all got excited about for the right reasons. And the annoying thing of Kafaji is we said this is the player we need. We said bits of that with Chloe Lacasse, who obviously moved on in the summer,
Yeah.
but we said Kafaji has the qualities we need. Someone who's a little bit outside of the box, has those sort of street football qualities, wants to take the game by the scruff of the neck. And then when she isn't playing, then I think that does rightfully wind up some of the supporters. And we don't seem to have players almost performing well and being rewarded for it at times with some of the team selections when we've not played well. Caitlin Ford, for example, started the Champions League qualifiers really well and then sort of dropped out the side and hasn't got back to that form that she had a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it doesn't feel like loads has changed. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, but at the moment you want to see a little bit more progress and also in-game management as well. Can you change formation? Can you throw some players on in different positions? Can you throw a second striker up top? At the moment, it's just a little bit too predictable.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest sort of problem, isn't it? I think obviously we can throw on players and hope things change, but I think we are quite predictable and we don't have like other plans. I mean, I think the squad we have is very good and I'm really happy with all these players that we've brought in. But I just sort of hope when we play other teams, well, there's a lot of teams that will struggle against that we should beat, and I just hope we find a way to win. And yeah, it must be hard for the players, I know, because as players they're not ever allowed to say things, and I think as fans it's hard to really know if Jonas, if if there is still a connection with the players, because you made a really good point before about when players have left they never really say anything about Jonas. I mean, it's an interesting one as well, and I just hope things do work out, but I think as fans it's very difficult to say. I mean, when Jonas first came, you felt his passion, his enthusiasm, and you felt this real connection with him. And I think now, like, I feel like the players are just sort of saving his job at the moment. And I think we just want to see improvements this season. And I just really hope it does happen. But It is a tough one because I don't think things are changing right now, but obviously a big game tomorrow I'm really looking forward to. I wanted to touch on a few things you said before about obviously Gio. I it was very hard for her to get in the first team, and obviously she went on loan, and I think without her really saying too much, I think she felt a bit hard done by, and she never really got a chance. And obviously, Katrina Curl obviously is part of the team, and we've not really seen a lot of her. We will probably want to see a bit more of her, but do you like with Gio, for example? Obviously, it's sad it's not worked out. These things do happen, but do you think a lot of that was down to like Jonas? Do you think there's times where maybe his management could have been a bit better? Like, what are your thoughts on that and the players he's brought in?
Gio's a really interesting case. I'm sort of one of those when I touched on earlier about the players who almost progressed so quickly because of the ACL injuries, and she was one of those. She signed as a very talented young player. Don't get me wrong, she still is now going and playing
Yeah,
for Atletico Madrid in the Spanish league. And we saw her at Meadow Park recently, actually, in those Champions League qualifiers. She missed a couple of good chances, but she's a lively player. She's still quite a raw forward, and maybe someone who wasn't quite a number nine or probably more of a winger, I'd say, in her Arsenal days. And now at Atletico, she's playing as more of an out-and-out striker, which is quite interesting. But she was obviously on loan at Everton, where Katrina Cole spent time last season, and she got recalled because of those injuries, and she didn't really make her mark. But the interesting thing then was that the next season, Arsenal lined up a loan for her. A couple of those options fell through, so she stuck not being able to play football for 6 months until January. She then went over to Madrid CEF, worked with a manager over there who she'd played under before, and really enjoyed her football again. So I just wondered quite what the plan was with her, because if it was to send her alone in the first season, which obviously was to Everton, she would have had the whole season at Everton. And then if they'd have looked to send her out on loan again, 2 loan seasons in a row after signing quite a
yeah.
talented young player, that doesn't seem like the best of plans to me. So it's a bit of a curious case, and probably one where the club and the player will look back and say we probably could have managed that better.
Yeah. It's so tough as well because things don't work out sometimes, and we got to see Gio in other competitions, with the League Cup type of ones, and we always saw a glimpse of her, and it's a real shame it hasn't worked out. And I think for her, I think it's been quite hard because, like you said, it took a long time for her to get a loan, and I feel like she was just sort of sitting around not doing much. And for her, obviously, for her career, she won't want to do that. And yeah, I think with Katrina Curl, it'll be interesting one this season because obviously she was at loan to Everton and she's here at Arsenal now, come back. And what would you say you hope for her this season? Because we know sort of our midfield and who would start, and it's probably hard for her to get those starting minutes. Do you think it's a good thing to have her around the club, or do you think she needs to get more minutes again like she did last season?
I think she does need more minutes, and I think
Yeah,
Arsenal need to really try and keep her happy if they think she's a player that long term is going to fit in. We know the competition Arsenal have got in midfield. Obviously, when Palova comes back, and they have got that balance of really the young talented midfielders like Curl, Cooney Cross, Palova, for example, and then the older two of Little and Valti, who obviously we want to play football for the next 50 years and never retire. But if Little and Valti were to retire and you ended up Cooney Cross, Palova, Curl, perhaps Williamson obviously can play in midfield, but she's predominantly a centre back. So if those two older players were to go now, you'd think actually we've got some real talent in midfield. You'd obviously want to add to that, and that's probably the frustration for Curl, is that players like Little and Valti keep getting better and better.
yeah,
And you're not going to come in and take their place in the side. And obviously, Cooney Cross has done that. But even Cooney Cross this season might have been in a similar situation had Palova not done her ACL. And Cool was another one in that 22-23 season who probably played more minutes than the club had planned because of those injuries. She's a player who probably do really well at a club like Everton. She did well on loan there at the
yeah,
back last season. She's someone who obviously came from a different division, and yeah, has almost shot to the top of the WSL rather than at a lower club where maybe she'd play more minutes, and probably at the moment, alone away, whether Arsenal think, actually, do we have enough options in midfield, which they probably do, for her to go on loan in January. But then you look at next summer, is that going to be the end of her road at Arsenal? It'd be a real shame to let her go. But what
yeah.
she needs is development in the WSL, and at the moment, she's not going to be getting it at Arsenal.
It's so tough, isn't it? Because I think, like you said, if Palova, obviously Palova's injury was so unfortunate and a real shame, but we sort of know as well our options, and I think as well, like, because she doesn't play like often enough, and hopefully in these cup games when they come up, we'll see her getting regular minutes, because she's got a real good eye for those passes going forward, and she's so talented. But obviously right now in the league, we need to win it, and we need to, we can't really, it's like with the men's team, it's hard to throw the youth players in. You need to sort of play them when we know we're going to win comfortably, I think. So yeah, I do really hope it works, but it's a bit like you sort of can never predict how things are going to go when they're here, because obviously the WSL, attracts a lot of people to come here. Obviously Cardy to come from Barcelona, which shows you how big Arsenal are and how big, the Women's Super League is getting. So I think it's definitely, a really positive thing to see more players coming over. And yeah, before we do round the show up, I just thought, could you just tell people a bit about yourself? Because I know you obviously do a lot of stuff on women's football, and where they can find you.
Yeah, people can find me at Cardy Freddie on Twitter and at Guna Fanzine on Twitter. We're in the final stages of pulling together our first Arsenal women only fanzine for the season, which we're really excited about. It's online only, but it's completely free of charge as well. And that'll be hopefully out towards the end of this week before the Chelsea game. You can have it on your phone, your laptop, whatever device you're on, while you're sat in the stands at the game, you're on your way to the game, or you're sitting around having a cup of tea, and we've got loads and loads of content there. So we're really looking forward to that. So keep an eye out on our socials for that, and we hope you all enjoy it. And yeah, thanks for having me too.
Oh, you're very welcome. I really enjoyed it. It was really nice to reflect on things, and hopefully we'll win tomorrow. But yeah, please do check them out. What's your score prediction for tomorrow, by the way, before we go?
Oh, good question. I'd love it for Arsenal to win, but
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a narrow one. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, and I think away from home in Europe will
Yeah,
take.
you take. Yeah, I think definitely. I feel like because of our performance against Everton, I think the team are going to put in a good shift, and I hope so anyway. But I think, at the moment I'll take a draw. I'm going to go 2 on Arsenal. Do you know what? I absolutely loved how we played at the Emirates last season, with that Leah Williamson assist as well, like, and Marnham's goal. Blackstenius was on fire, so I just sort of hope we do see a few changes in the team as well. I think we'd feel a bit more excited with that. But yeah, guys, I hope we can win. A big thank you to all of you that have joined us. It's been really enjoyable to chat with you. But Arsenal women, I just hope things do improve, and yeah, better times to come in. Big thank you to everyone that's watched. If you can, don't forget to smash the likes, do subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.